What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/IDontWorkHereLady. This story's called, I thought what happened to me was an anomaly, but this sub proves how commonplace this kind of stuff is. When I found this sub, I was amazed at how many people had similar experiences to what I had happen. I just thought it was a rare alignment of the planets that caused it, but now I see how certain people are ridiculous and entitled when it comes to retail workers and where they see them fit in the social hierarchy. Anyways, here's my contribution. About 10 years ago, I worked as a delivery driver for AutoZone. Worked my morning shift, did my deliveries and other BS, and headed home. Realized I was out of toilet paper, so I stopped by Target on the way to pick some up. Found the toilet paper aisle and headed to get my brand. I'm picky. I was deciding between the biggest pack they had or just the 4-roll, doing the math and figuring out how much I had to spend that week. I noticed another customer had entered the aisle and was heading towards me, so I stepped forward assuming she'd pass behind me, and I went back to the big decision I had ahead of me. My concentration was broken a moment later by the distinct clearing of a throat in that way that it's only made to get someone's attention and not in a very polite way. I never considered that she thought I was an employee and just thought I was in her way. I looked at the gal and smiled and said, "Excuse me," stepped even closer to make room, assuming she thought I was in her way, and went back to what I was doing. "Well, are you gonna help me or what?" I was completely caught off guard. I was like, what in the heck is she asking me for help for? And I kinda looked around in that way you do just to make sure that you aren't misreading the situation. That's when I saw the Target employee in their red shirts and khaki pants pass the end of the aisle when it hit me. I'm wearing my red shirt with the name tag. I can understand the confusion now. I turned back to her and tried to laugh it off to save what I thought would be her embarrassment for mistaking me for a Target employee and tell her, "Sorry if my shirt confused you, but I don't work here." Thinking she'd be like, "Oh, silly me, you have a good day." And I'd be able to respond, "No worries at all, you take care out there." But heck no, that couldn't be how it went down. She then proceeds to respond with, "Yes, you do. You just don't want to help me," with a noticeable edge in her voice and narrowing her eyes at me. At this point, I'm freaking gobsmacked, asking myself if this is really happening, because it just seems so absurd considering this was pre-Reddit for me and I'd never heard about something like this occurring to anyone else. I tell her, irritated but still not really urinated, just nonplussed. "Sorry, but I work at AutoZone." She just kinda loses her temper now and says something to the effect of, I'm freaking lazy and she wants to know the name of my manager so she can let them know why their employee is lying to customers, refusing to help them, blah, 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 blah. Then I uttered the line that made me laugh when I found this sub because of how true it was, and said with as much indignation and righteous fury I had. Screen warning. "I don't work here, lady!" She got ready to start in on me again, and I cut her off. "Look, I've got black pants. They've got tan." I unclip my name tag and hold it out, shaking it at her. "See? Freaking AutoZone, not Target. Now go away." She starts winding up again to defend her idiocy, and by that point, I'm freaking done. So I grab the toilet paper, can't remember if I got the 4-pack or the big one, sorry, and I gave her a final F you, and walk away as she's squawking on behind me. Seems like she was trying to figure out which AutoZone I worked at. I could only assume so she could come by and spread some of her unique dookie headery around there as well, and probably ask to speak to some type of manager or call corporate or any of the other unfortunate normal BS we've all become accustomed to on here. So yeah, that's my story, with the reality of how weird people are in retail. I'd have called her a Karen here, but I know a couple of really great Karens, so I kinda avoid the term, but I can see why it has become so prevalent. I no longer work retail, and if the universe is kind, I never will again. But to all you retail workers getting ready for the nightmare of Black Friday and the ensuing holiday season, I wish you well, and I hope people genuinely treat you like people and appreciate you being there. I know I do. My man, let me tell you something. If you think that something that happened to you was just a one-off thing that just happened to you and is really rare, I can tell you right now, if it's dependent on someone being really stupid, then it definitely happens all the time because people are always stupid. This story's called "Small Shop on an Industrial Block Would Often Be Mistaken for Something Else." I used to work at a small machine shop on an industrial block. The addresses were all jumbled up and the block was poorly planned, but the majority of the businesses there didn't really deal with the general public, so it didn't really matter. Every now and then, we'd have someone knock on our door looking for a different business. No big deal. The block was really confusing. 2 buildings behind us was one of those Asian massage parlors. One day, while it was just me and my boss at the shop, we got a knock on the door. He went to get it while I kept working. They exchanged a few words, then my boss turned from the door and shouted out, "Hey, OP! We giving out palm careers today?" We both laughed our asses off while watching this red-faced little man jog away from our building on the security cameras. We had a couple other seedy-looking folk come to our door, but most of them would scurry off without saying anything once they saw we had only machinery and dudes inside. You see, that's a funny story because this dude got caught trying to solicit prostitution, and then he ran away. It's funny. Okay, this story's called Can of Robot Kick-Ass. I've never been on Reddit, but when I heard about this subreddit, I knew I had a story to tell. A bit of background. Last year, I took about 2 months of MMA courses. I had never gotten in a fight, but I have been itching for one ever since I took the course. Fast forward a couple of months, I'm at a local Aldi's. I am and was in college at the time, so I barely get any sleep and I can be very monotone. That particular day, I had stayed up all night studying for a test and was in no mood for anyone's crap. I see a little boy, probably 4 or 5 years old, jumping for a cereal box. There was an older gentleman in a wheelchair next to him. He calls me over. Despite my crappy mood, I can't say no to children or the elderly. I treat my elders with respect, and little kids are so full of wonder and excitement that I take any chance I get to leave a positive impact. The man in the wheelchair asked me to help his grandson get his favorite cereal. I tell the man, sure, and ask the little boy, which cereal do you want? "The Fruit Loops," he said. So with my immense height, I was 5'6" by the way, I grab a box of Fruit Loops for the child. The man thanks me and hands me a 5. But I put my hand in between us and say, "My pleasure, sir," and go back to my shopping. I'm trying to decide which cereal to get when I notice a middle-aged man staring at me. We will call him Male Karen. My best friend works at an Aldi's and tells me this happens a lot when a customer wants attention. I hate having people stare at me. It makes me extremely uncomfortable. I shrug it off and set my eyes on a cereal. Blueberry Frosted Mini Wheats. I didn't have a cart. I was only there for a couple of things. They only had 1 box and it was pretty crumbled. My friend tells me that product is easily damaged as the items on stores' arriving pallets are thrown together pretty mismatched. I pick up the box and stare at it for a second, half admiring my choice and half inspecting the damage. As I stare at it, I feel a rough tap on my shoulder. I'm easily startled and I hate unknown physical contact. So I flinch and let out a shaky "God!" as I run towards my aggressor. It was Male Karen. "Are you just gonna stand there or are you gonna come help me?" It took me a second to process as I was running on negative 12 hours of sleep. My happy demeanor from helping the elderly man and his grandson was gone. I stare at him for a few seconds, blank-faced, and respond in my monotone voice. "What?" "I said, you need to help me. Now where are the damn canned foods?" This was my first time in Aldi's, but I decided to go because I only needed a couple of things. I responded to Male Karen, keeping my monotone, because I had already had enough of his crap. I told him, "I don't know, dude." I see Male Karen getting red. This man had a short temper. "You work here, that means you have had training on the store layout. Now, I'll ask you again, where are the damned canned foods?" Male Karen was now in my face yelling this at me. It probably would have been very intimidating, but my MMA classes made me either fearless or reckless. I didn't move an inch. "What makes you think I work here?" I say in my calm, robot voice. "You're in uniform and I just saw you help that cripple out." I could see a vein bulge in Male Karen's head as he said this. Like I said, my friend works at an Aldi, so I know the uniform. They wear a navy blue polo that has an Aldi logo on the left breast, with a gray collar, gray shoulders, and gray sides with blue jeans and safety boots. I was wearing a red V-neck, black jeans, a hat, important for later, and my safety boots because they're the only shoes I have with soles. I tell Mel Karen, still in my HAL 9000 voice, "Look dude, I don't work here and you're starting to pique me off, so please step off." Probably not the best thing to say to an angry person, but he was making me sick. I decide I wasn't in the mood to shop that day, so I turn away from Mel Karen, put my cereal back. Then, as I put my arms to my side, "Hannibal, do your thing." The mother trucker sucker punched me in the jaw. Now, I could have gotten the manager, and I could have pressed charges, but none of that was going through my mind at the moment. Even if it had, I was itching for a reason to test my newly learned MMA skills. Remember, I thought back to my first day at MMA. My coach taught me something he called the tornado choke. A command was input into my body and I executed. Male Karen was bigger than me, but barely. In the blink of an eye, I pull his right shoulder while pushing his left. As he was turning away from me, I slide my right hand under his neck, prepping him for a rear naked. With my wagona against Male Karen's throat, I pull him onto my knee while contemplating the rear naked. Male Karen tries to talk or yell, but my choke was too tight. Nothing came out. He tried to struggle away. This only sped the process up. After about 5 seconds, Male Karen goes limp. I didn't want to wake him prematurely, so I wait another 2 seconds and slowly set him on the floor. My choke was so fast and so flawless that nobody in the store noticed. I wanted to go home and I didn't want to go to the cops, so I confidently walked out of there. I parked in a couple of parking spots over because it was a nice day and I wanted an enjoyable walk. Lucky for me, because this meant the security cameras never got my license plate. Me wearing a hat also meant the cameras never caught my face. The next day, my friend told me about how a man got choked out at his work and was found by an employee. He told me they called the cops, but decided not to pursue because Male Karen threw the first punch and suffered no damage. My friend couldn't believe it was me at first, but judging the man's hat, clothes, and height in the video, he was pretty easy to convince. We still talk about this story in disbelief to this day. It was probably the highlight of my life. This story's called I Do Work Here, but Not Right Now. This happened in May 2013. Where I work, you are allowed to clock in and out up to 9 minutes early. And this particular day, I was doing that. One of my coworkers and I both did this regularly, and we both ended our shifts at the same time that day at 4:51 p.m., if memory serves me correctly. I will also add that where I work, company policy prohibits people from working off the clock, requesting or requiring others to work off the clock, and ignoring it when others are working off the clock is also prohibited. Signs are posted in the lounge and also near the time clock to remind us of this policy. This is important for later. After clocking out, my coworker and I walked to the entrance together, looking forward to the restful evening ahead of us. As we passed the final department before reaching the checkouts, an older coworker, I believe 75 years old at the time, approached us. I had no idea this woman had any degree of entitlement, but I learned in these few seconds how wrong I had been. Let's meet the cast. There's me, your host for this journey, nice coworker, entitled coworker, other coworker. Entitled coworker was from another country, so her English was not perfect. She approached me with an empty shopping cart and asked me, "You clock out?" "Yes," entitled coworker replied. That is the best way I can write that sound people sometimes utter when they mean no. Entitled coworker then grabbed my arm and proceeded to pull me toward the empty cart, which she was expecting me to take to the front, despite my telling her that I had already clocked out for the day. Nice coworker, perhaps sensing an escalation, took the cart to the front because, as I described, he is a nice person. Me addressing entitled coworker, "You know, I'm off the clock, and for that matter, so is he. But he was going that way." I'm bowing up to my full height, which was significantly taller than entitled coworker. It is against company policy to request an associate to work off the clock. I then walk away from entitled coworker, who called after me, "You watch what you say." Other coworker, some days later, told me that entitled coworker had complained to him about the incident, telling him that since I could have taken the empty cart to the front, I was in the wrong for not doing so, and apparently ignoring the fact that she was breaking company policy by asking who she knew was off the clock to perform work. Not long after that, entitled coworker sadly became ill later that year and had to resign from her job. Entitled coworker passed away later that year, and I have been told she was still complaining about this incident while she was on her deathbed. Okay, well, that's kinda sad, but wow, how petty do you have to be to take that to your deathbed? Jeez. This story's called A Little Karen Revenge. This can probably put under a few other subs, but I think it fits here the best. Background. I used to be an hourly manager for Walmart, worked nights, and had all the typical Walmart people incidents. The company underwent a lot of changes, and promotion was looking grim, so I left on good terms with the store manager. I still live close to my old store and needed to grab a few things before taking my family out to dinner. It was Father's Day, so I had khakis and a blue button-up on. I happened to bump into my former store manager, and we caught up for a bit. We had been talking close to the registers, and as we parted, Karen came screeching at me. I looked at my former boss, and he grinned and nodded. Here's the cast. Store manager. Me. Karen. Security. Your cashier has verbally assaulted me and has humiliated me in front of all those customers. Points at a cashier. Side note, I know this cashier. I hired and trained her. She had also babysat for me on several occasions. I'm good friends with her family. Slow down. Please start from the beginning. That little bench told me my money is no good here. She wouldn't run my card and called me trash. Me, seeing this as a scam for free stuff. Well, please come with me and security can take a statement. I am sure they can pull footage from the register while you fill it out. I begin heading towards the security office and she begins to follow. But at the mention of register footage, she stops cold and begins getting louder and irate. I want my items! I want them now! While she is screaming, I recognize the head of security walking our way. I understand, ma'am. Please come with me and this will go quicker. Security stops to talk to store manager and I gesture for Karen to follow. We make our way to the security office. Store manager and security in tow. Security opens the door and lets Karen in. Inside, the footage is already on the screen, and store manager moves past me into the room. Ma'am, we are gonna have to detain you till the police arrive. I will not wait. I want my things now. Who are you? I am the store manager, and apart from you yelling at this customer, he gestures to me. I grin at her. You have a stolen credit card on you, and you will wait for the police. Store manager shuts the door and turns to me. So, when are you coming back? As much fun as that was, I am not. I have had my fill of retail. My little revenge on Karen's. I never told her I worked there. I acted as a concerned customer. Turns out the card was stolen and flagged. She got upset over her stolen card getting declined. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. It's always a good day when another Karen ends up in jail. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.